As you've been hearing this afternoon, our colleague Evan Gershkovich is set to be freed in a US-Russian prisoner swap. The Wall Street Journal reporter, who was convicted of espionage last month, had been held in Moscow since March 2023 and is among other Western citizens and dual citizens expected to be exchanged. You'll know that we've been marking the days since Evan's detainment began here on Times Radio every day, and today marked 491 days. Well, let's speak now to Bill Browder, a high-profile Kremlin critic, head of the global Magnitsky Justice Campaign and author of Red Notice, How I Became Putin's #1 Enemy. It's very good to talk to you, Bill. Very good afternoon from us. Can you just put this into context for us? Just how important is this prisoner swap?
Well, first of all, this doesn't just involve Evan Gershkovich. It also potentially involves Paul Whelan, who is the longest-serving major American political prisoner. The swap also involves potentially up to 20 other prisoners. There's another American citizen named Alsu Kurmasheva, who is a reporter from Radio Free Europe. There is Vladimir Karamurza, who is a Russian opposition activist and a British citizen, and many others. There are also a lot of Russians coming the other way, prisoners, criminals who have been caught, Russian criminals who've been caught in the West. The most important of those is a man named Vadim Krasikov. Mr. Krasikov was a murderer who had been assigned by the government of Russia to murder enemies of Russia, and he was caught killing a Russian dissident in the Tea Garden in Berlin. He was arrested and he was sentenced to prison. For some reason, that particular individual is somebody who Putin has publicly talked about as part of the prisoner swap, and apparently and allegedly, he's on a plane going in the other direction towards Russia as this large group of Americans, Russians, and other nationalities are being taken from Russia out to Turkey.
Give us your thoughts, Bill, about why this has been completed now. What should we read into the timing of this?
Well, Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan are very important U.S. prisoners, important for the Biden administration. And the one thing that we can say is that Putin had a very strong preference for Trump to beat Biden. And so while Biden was the presidential candidate, Putin didn't want to do any big favors for Biden. By having Biden drop out, this doesn't particularly help or hurt Kamala Harris's campaign. And so Putin has probably made the judgment that he wants his guys back enough so that he's not no longer worried about doing any favors for Biden, that he was able to do this deal right now. I had predicted if Biden had been a candidate that Putin would have waited until after the election to do this deal. He doesn't have to do that right now, and that's why it's happening today as opposed to in November or December.
But why wouldn't he have waited until what seems like quite a high possibility that Trump would get back in?
Well, I think that he has his own issues that have nothing to do with Trump. I think that he wants these Russian criminals back. He's wanted them for a long time, and so he's weighing up two things. One is his desire to get Krasikov and the other criminals back versus his desire to do Trump any favors. And based on that calculus, getting the Russian criminals back is more important, and that's what he ended up doing.
What kind of parade of success might we then witness in Russia?
Well, we're going to be witnessing our own parade of success right here because Evan Gershkovich shouldn't have been in prison. He didn't do any crime. He was just reporting. Paul Whelan is not a criminal. Vladimir Karamurza, my friend and opposition activist, was just calling for democracy in Russia. And so we should absolutely, on our side, have a big ticker tape parade to celebrate all of these unjustly, wrongly imprisoned people being freed. Now, it does raise a very important question, which is why are we allowing any Westerner to go back to Russia when Russia can just arrest them and then create these scenarios where we have this problem going forward? I think that there should be a travel ban on British, on American, on European citizens traveling to Russia, because otherwise they can just take more hostages, and we end up in a situation like this where genuine murderers and criminals have to be freed in order to get out the innocent people.
Do you think that's likely to happen?
I think we're sort of moving in that direction. There are so many people who have been wrongly imprisoned for a reason. I mean, it's just the shocking way in which Putin takes hostages. And look at Evan Gershkovich is the prime example. He was a young Wall Street Journal reporter who was just in Moscow reporting. That's all he was doing, and he was basically plucked out, sentenced to 16 years. And spent a lot of time in jail for just being a reporter. And so, I mean, as much as we need reporters out there, we also have a responsibility not to create these scenarios. And I think that there should be a very strong look at putting restrictions in place for people traveling to Russia.
I suppose the point of my question about what we might see Russia and Putin now doing with the prisoners that he's got back is whether or not he will then appoint them to very key positions and, in a sense, point them back in our direction in an aggressive way.
Well, so I think that there's some very scary things about these prisoners going back. This Vadim Krasikov was a murderer. He was a murderer who got caught, and now he is a murderer who got caught who was freed. And so what's the message that Putin is sending to his international assassination squad? And that message is, you go out and you do your assassinations, and if you get into trouble, we'll get you out. And that's a very scary thing for everybody, for me particularly, and for others who are enemies of the Putin regime. And so that's not a nice situation to have happen. We've also seen, of course, that in previous times when Russian criminals and spies have been arrested, they've come back and become members of parliament. We saw that in the Anna, I can't remember her surname, but one of the people who was caught in America back 5 or 6 years ago, and she's now a member of parliament. And we've seen similar types of things with the guys who were involved in the Litvinenko assassination, where one of them became Alexander Lugovoy, became a member of parliament. And so you're going to see, these people, of course, being welcomed back with open arms and being made heroes in Russia.
It's very good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for sparing us the time. That is Bill Browder. He's a high-profile Kremlin critic. And as you heard him say there, these are increasingly dangerous times for people who are speaking out against Putin. He's more worried for his own safety than ever before.